Gynocentrism. It is a word every MGTOW/red pillar is familiar with. So why am I making a video explaining gynocentrism? Because it is the most important concept in the men's movement. Without a full understanding of gynocentrism, our movement is nothing but a conservative reactionary movement bellyaching about feminism, insisting a woman's place is relaxing at home while men fight tooth and nail to survive in the rat race of the corporate world. And also, as a reminder to all the MGTOW and self-proclaimed red pillars who either don't get it, or have forgotten it, the wiki entry for gynocentrism is utterly useless. It basically says female-centered, pertaining to viewing the world from a female perspective, and most of the article goes on to waste time talking about its etymology from Greek and how it is technically not a proper etiologically derived word, gynocentrism, as I am using it here, and how I wish we would all use it, is a biologically driven instinct to protect women. This instinct is in both men and women, though manifests itself differently. The overall effect is society. Both men and women, being hypersensitive to female suffering, and callous to male suffering. It is society being hyper-aware of dangers and injustices to women, while being oblivious to dangers and injustices to men. It is, quite frankly, a matter of putting women first. Gynocentrism is not a random anomaly, a mental illness, a philosophy, or a derivative of some other philosophy. It is an instinct. This instinct is in most, if not all, other animals as well as humans. The evolutionary basis for this instinct works like this. The value of either given sex is based upon how limited their capacity for offspring is. Men replenish their sperm very quickly. A woman can only become pregnant a few times in her life, so women are the limiting factor in the production of offspring. This makes women more valuable. The reason for all of this is simple. For a species to survive, it must reproduce. No matter how long the lifespan of a species, as long as its birth rate is higher than its death rate, it will continue to exist. If the female is the limiting factor, then her life and her safety is more important. It will hurt a species significantly more to have 20% of its female population killed, than it would to have 20% of its male population killed. Thus we have evolved with an instinct to protect women and keep them safe. This instinct is in both men and women. Women instinctively look out for the well-being of women. Men instinctively look out for the well-being of women. Females are more important to the survival of the species than the male. Thus a species must behave in a way that prioritizes the well-being of the females ahead of the males. This is gynocentrism. Once you fully understand this, you will see why men pursue women in mating, and why women are very picky, and view themselves as deserving. You will understand the origin of their narcissism, their entitled attitude. You will understand why men are disposable in our society. You will understand why women use men, and control them, as a tool. You will understand why our culture says women and children first. You will understand why women's cancers and diseases receive more funding. You will understand why women are given lighter sentences and kept out of jail more. You will understand why men pay the bulk of the taxes and women receive the bulk of the entitlement programs. And now you understand why women are seen as victims, and men are seen as dangerous. It is also the primary reason feminists tell men to check their privilege all the while being the privileged group. Women are instinctively wired to take all of their safety and luxury for granted, and to see themselves as underprivileged, or victimized, endangered or persecuted. Women are just doing what they were born to do, looking out for their own kind, and viewing the world from the lens of how does this affect women without stopping to care and asking themselves how does this affect men. Women instinctively believe that safety and well-being is a thing reserved for women, and it is not reserved for men, because the role of men is to look out for the safety and well-being of women. Men are to protect and provide, and to part with their own safety and well-being if necessary. Men must make sacrifices to keep women safe and well. The safety and well-being of men is not in the equation. Thus they are blind to male suffering and injustice. That which threatens men only matters if the threat to these men harms women. All concerns in our society are centered around whether or not this pleases or displeases women. If something devastated our economy, and put nearly all men out of jobs, this is bad because men being out of jobs would hurt women who rely on men as husbands to support them as wives, or support them as taxpayers, or support them as maintainers of infrastructure that builds the society women enjoy living in. If it were possible that our economy would be destroyed, putting nearly every man out of a job, but for some reason, this didn't hurt or inconvenience women, then our nation wouldn't be worried about it. We wouldn't worry and we wouldn't care, and we probably wouldn't try to fix it. The reason being, men don't matter. The only way in which men matter is in relation to how a thing that has an effect on men also will affect women. To some degree, the things I said were exaggerated, but they were exaggerated to help you understand how this system, this mechanism, of gynocentrism works. I must also point out we don't think about the gynocentric decisions we make. It happens on a subconscious level. Human nature is essentially a matter of how circumstances and stimuli cause us to feel. Environment is what gives us taught knowledge to help aid us in how to deal with the way stimuli makes us feel. An example would be, we see a beautiful and sweet-smelling fruit, we instinctively want to put it in our mouth, tasting and eating it. Environment teaches us that it is poisonous, and so we modify our behavior by resisting the urge to eat it. Another example, we see a large animal approaching us quickly, possibly even roaring or other intimidating vocalization. We want to run from it. Environment may teach us not to run, but instead to lay down and play dead. Lion tamers instinctively want to run when one of the lions gets angry and combative, but environment has taught him to respond with certain aggressive gestures. Another example, we see an object, perhaps food, perhaps a utility, and we wish to have it. Our human nature tells us to take it. Environment teaches us that we can't just take things, we must have a claim to it first. When a man sees a beautiful woman, he wants to touch her body, feel its softness and curves. Environment teaches us that people have an exclusive right to their body and personal space, and to touch them without permission is a violation of their right. Thus most men don't touch women without their permission. Again, human instinct mostly just comes down to how a situation makes us feel. It is environment that teaches us a greater awareness of the situation, and even the appropriate response to the situation. To those who would say that because gynocentrism is human nature and therefore unchangeable, I disagree. The great misconception is that because a feeling or behavior manifesting from that feeling is natural, it is somehow unchangeable. Again, let us take the lion tamer for example. When a large creature roars or makes threatening gestures, it is our hardwired instinct to feel fear. When we experience fear coming from an object or physical source, our instinct is to quickly distance ourselves from that source. Ergo it is our instinctive nature to run when the lion looks at us and roars aggressively, but the lion tamer has been trained that turning his back and running will most certainly get him killed. Instead of obeying that instinct, he does the opposite. He gestures back with intimidating gestures. A well-trained lion tamer learns how to posture, gesture, position himself and the lion, in a way that triggers the instinctive drive of the lion to back down and submit. In this example we see two different species behaving in an unnatural way. The lion backing down from a creature that should otherwise be a meal. The human aggressively taking charge of a creature he should be running from. Gynocentrism is an instinct. The urge to run from danger is many times a more primal instinct with more emotion, more hardwired into our brain, than gynocentrism. Another example of how we can overcome our instinctive behavior is the fact that we do not go around stealing from people, in spite of the fact we are all born with the tendency to take what we want. Perhaps all of us have stolen something at some point in our lives, and there are still people who steal from others very often. But most people don't steal things most of the time. Gynocentrism will always be an instinct, like the urge to steal. But it can be overcome in a society, just like our urge to steal. Gynocentrism is found in both men and women, and therefore we must work towards building a society that alters the behavior of both men and women. Realize that the behavior of women is often dependent on the behavior of men, and the behavior of men is often dependent on the behavior of women. Therefore, we must slowly and constantly work on examining the role between men and women, and figure out which behaviors in each of the sexes produces a change in the other. Some people will criticize MGTOW with such accusations as, for a group of men claiming to separate themselves, in some way, from women, all you guys talk about is women. Again, this is because we must understand the effect one has on the other, in an effort to effect change in either one. When men think about women, it has always been in the context of, how do I get girls to like me? How do I get girls to give me sex? How do I make them happy? It is only now that men are beginning to think about women in the context of, how does her nature exploit me? How does my own nature lead to my exploitation? How do I get society to value me as much as them? And so on. And this type of questioning and thinking can only be brought about when we understand that our masculine nature as men is designed for the benefit of women. A woman's feminine nature is designed for the benefit of women. A man's nature is designed to be exploited by women. A woman's nature is to exploit men. This is gynocentrism. It is a human instinct that we evolved with. It was once vital to the survival of our species. It is no longer vital to the survival of our species. We humans have conquered the world. We have become so powerful that no living thing threatens us. We have wiped out countless species without even really trying. We humans have no rival on this world. Intellectual parties starting war for ideological supremacy threatens the ideological group. War for racial, genetic supremacy threatens the race. But neither threaten the species. No matter what type of war we have and for what reason, humans will always be the victor in human against human combat. Thus the species itself is never threatened, just tribes, nations, ideologies, races. Nuclear war does however threaten our species, but gynocentrism will not help us to endure a nuclear war. We are at a point in our human existence where the planet is oversaturated with people depriving the Earth of its limited resources. We need a massive population reduction, and creating offspring via artificial womb and ova is a very realistic and achievable technology, thereby removing women as the limiting factor in population, and with genetic engineering being able to manufacture healthier, better people, making the instinctive mating habits of men and women obsolete. Women, and their wombs, are no longer the gatekeepers of tomorrow. Us men will very soon be the ones controlling our genetic destiny. Gynocentrism was once an essential instinct for the preservation of the human species, but this instinct has outlived its usefulness and is now acting as a burden to humanity. The only possible use for gynocentrism today is for racial supremacy and racial survival. However, genetically engineering better humans is not only a possibility but an unavoidable reality. We will be building smarter, saner, healthier humans. The notion of which race produces the best art, technology, and so on, will be a laughable argument when we have new people, regardless of their African, Asian, or European appearance, which will have better health, better self-control, and removed from physical defects. We currently have the technology to filter out African, Asian, European traits, to some degree. As time goes on, and we have a better understanding of which genes do what things, and a better catalogue of races and their DNA, then even if one particular race is better than another today, all will be inferior to the new breed. This is not a possibility, this is positively an unavoidable reality, and I don't even think this reality will take much longer than a mere century or two. So gynocentrism as an instinctive mechanism for the protection of the females, for the preservation of the race, the clan, the people, is on the brink of becoming completely irrelevant. We can overcome our gynocentric thinking, and undo the gynocentric foundation of our cultural norms and laws, but it all starts with recognizing the existence of gynocentrism, and realizing it is not an ideology, it is not the outcome of an ideology. Defeating feminism, for example, will not undo any bit of gynocentrism. Feminism may be a vile female supremacist ideology that persecutes men, privileging women at the expense of men, and so on. But it is a symptom of the problem, not the cause of it. Removing feminism from our society isn't a bad thing, but if it is the only change our society undergoes in regards to the sexes, it is a useless change that will only default us to the old ways, which are gynocentric. Defeating feminism but not gynocentrism is like handing someone a cough suppressant to treat their pneumonia. Suppressing the symptom is not the same as attacking the cause. This is why I reject the title of anti-feminist, and encourage everyone to reject this title. Anti-feminism just means regressing to an older gynocentric role than our current gynocentric role. Anti-feminism is no better for men than feminism. Both are exploitative and hostile to the well-being of men. Even before the days of the first self-proclaimed feminist, men were volunteering for war, and men were being drafted and forced into war. Women were staying home safe and sound, completely protected from war, because she is more valuable. Imagine a society that gets 20% of its men killed in a war. That hurts the society. Now imagine if it were 20% of its women that got killed. That would devastate the society. The reason being, even though societies may value monogamy, a man's nature is polygamous. So long as there are young, beautiful, fertile women, there will always be a penis ready to inject potent sperm into her. In fact, this is one of the reasons men are more polygamous, because in order for a tribe, race, society, to keep its population up, no womb could be wasted, and women often outnumbered men, simply due to the fact we have protected them. And we have done this protecting for this very reason. A population is dependent more on the amount of wombs than penises for survival. This example, of men being forced to die in war because he is disposable, while women are sheltered from war because she is irreplaceable. This is why I personally feel so strongly that women must be eligible for military draft. The day our society tells women, that her womb does not make her more valuable than a man, and that she can die right alongside the men, is a day the greatest example of gynocentrism is defeated. In and of itself, women being drafted is nothing, but the symbolism is vital. Another essential part of breaking gynocentrism, is that men must learn to not protect women, or provide for them. Traditionalists, almost exclusively conservatives, have made many positive gynocentric arguments that men must adhere to a traditional masculine role, and women a traditional feminine role. Women must stay home to raise the children. Men and women cannot be equal because we are not biological equals, and so on. We may not be biological the same physically or neurologically, and thus behaviorally, but this does not mean equal treatment, responsibility, and consideration between the sexes is impossible. I have explained in past videos that women breaking their traditional role of stay-at-home mother, which in this day and age of technology and public school has translated to being a stay-at-home on your ass in front of the TV relaxing all day wife. How breaking this role is beneficial to the family, children, the family unit, the race, the nation, and the male sex. In past videos, I have destroyed these fear-driven reactionary traditionalist myths, and will continue to destroy these myths and many more, but I won't waste any time in this video. In order to defeat gynocentrism, we must work tirelessly for many generations to come, to create a society where no law protects women in ways that it would not protect men equally. We must shame any male or female behavior in our society that benefits women at the expense of men, or offers any type of safety and protection status to women. We must never concern ourselves with what makes women feel safe. We must understand that women instinctively resort to feeling or claiming to feel unsafe, frightened, threatened, in order to prompt males to act on her behalf, whether that act is the erection of a law or policy. And thus when women instinctively say I feel unsafe, we must hold them to male standards and tell them toughen up, cupcake. I cannot drive this point home loud enough. Gynocentrism is based on protecting women. Women instinctively feel afraid, or claim to feel afraid, of a situation they want changed, and men instinctively cater to this. This is the very heart of gynocentrism, and gynocentrism is the very heart of male inequality. We must shame women for their cowardice when they claim to feel afraid, and we must shame men who white knight to protect them against threats real or imagined. We must build an entire culture where women's feelings do not count more than men's. A culture that is conscious of women's instinctive urge to claim they feel unsafe. Any man that advocates for a different treatment or role of the sexes, that in any way protects women, is being gynocentric, and thus whether he realizes it or not, is every bit a threat to the fair and ethical treatment of men, than is the most rabid and vile feminist. This video is meant to explain to the newcomers, that the true enemy of men is gynocentrism, and that all inequality men face is based on this, and to remind the self-proclaimed red pillars of what we are fighting, since far too much conversation in MGTOW circles is revolving around why I don't like girls, rather than something constructive.